Okay. All right, welcome to the meeting of Bridges and Tunnels Committee, or Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority Committee meeting. There being no public speakers, I will recognize the acting president, Mr. Spiro.
Thanks, Commissioner. I don't believe there are any changes to the committee work plan. I guess we need to approve all the minutes also.
All right, we have a copy of the minutes in each of your booklets. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any changes? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving the agenda.
Okay, we'll start with the report on operations. Jim Fortunato.
Good morning. The report on operations begins on page 18. Traffic was higher in December with 25.4 million crossings as compared with 24.2 million crossings in December of 2014. This represents a 4.9% increase. In 2015, total annual traffic was 297.9 million vehicles, 11.5 million or 4% above 2014 annual traffic. There was no snowfall in December of 2015, with December of 2014 as well below normal at 1.6 inches. December of 2015 gas prices averaged $2.18 per gallon, which was 60 cents lower than in December of 2014. Easy Pass volume increased by 6.4% in December of 2015 as compared to December of 2014, while crossings using cash and other payment methods declined by 3.5% for the month. Passenger car travel was up 5.1% and other vehicle travel decreased by 1.7% from December of 2014. The January 23rd, 24th blizzard saw an over 70% reduction in traffic as compared to the same weekend in 2014. Preliminary traffic figures for the 23rd and 24th storm totaled 332,492 as compared to the same weekend in 2014, which had 1,122,623 vehicle crossings. Preliminary monthly traffic figures for January 2016 are 5.5% more than the same period last year. This ends the report on operations.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no questions, we'll move on to the safety report. Pashko.
Good morning. The report on safety for December 2015 is illustrated on pages 32 and 33, in which you will see the charts and graphs showing the 5-year average summary of employee accident reports, lost time injuries, customer collisions and injury collisions, and lastly, contractor injuries. For this year in the report, the number of employee accidents have decreased by 19.6%, and the lost time injury rates for the same period have also decreased by 26.2%. For the same reporting period, the total customer collision rate has increased slightly by 5%, and the injury collision rate has also increased by 4.3%. The contractor lost time injury rate has decreased by 3.3%. Unless there are any questions or comments, that concludes my report on safety. Thank you.
The Customer Environment Survey. Pat Parisi.
The Customer Environment Survey begins on page 34, and some highlights for the fourth quarter and year-end are B&T striped 149,877 linear feet of roadway in the fourth quarter, bringing 2015 year-to-date roadway striping to just over 520,000 linear feet. Bridges and Tunnels repaired 661 potholes in the fourth quarter. 2015 year-to-date potholes repaired were 4,007 as compared to 5,088 repaired in 2014. Nearly 1,000 potholes have already been repaired in the first 7 weeks of 2016 as a result of the vast freeze-thaw cycles we've been experiencing. B&T swept 4,129 miles of roadway at its bridges and tunnels in the fourth quarter and 12,601 miles for 2015 in total. Over 90% of bridges and tunnels, 7,579, roadway, aviation, navigation, and necklace lights were operational throughout 2015, nearly identical to 2014 results. B&T maintained and cleaned 511 storm drains in the fourth quarter and a total of 2,139 in 2015. Easy Pass toll lane availability remained extremely high at 99.97% for 2015. This is a measure of operational performance of the Easy Pass equipment and the percentage of lanes available for use. This ends the customer environment survey, if there's no questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Moving on.
Okay, the Easy Pass report begins on page 44. Our market share as of the end of December was 85.7%, which is 1.2 percentage points higher than the previous year. We also had our highest one-day market share ever, reaching 89.5% on February 10th. More than 18,800 Easy Pass accounts were opened in December. About half of those were Easy Pass on-the-go accounts, and our in-lane program, we're zeroing in on 700,000 on-the-go tags sold in the lane. We're about 698,000 as of this morning. There's no questions on the Easy Pass report. I'll move on to the financial report, which begins on page 51, and it includes preliminary year-end information. Toll revenue for the year was $1.08.9 billion, which is $16.6 million or 0.9% higher than our final estimate. Traffic for the year was up about 1% against the final estimate. And preliminary January traffic, despite the storm, was up 2.3% against plan. Revenue also up 2.3% against the budget, about $3 million. That's for preliminary numbers. Year to year, as Jim said, our traffic was up about 4%, and I'll walk you through a slide in a minute that shows this year's traffic versus where it's been the last decade or so, which Mitch asked for last week. Preliminary January results also up last year, despite the big storm, about 5.9%. On the expense side, total expenses were $473.3 million. We're about $40.3 million lower than our final estimate. Non-labor costs were down about 9.7%, primarily due to timing, and labor costs lower as well by about $16.9 million, 6.2%, primarily due to payroll vacancies. Overtime was down about 18.2% against the plan, about $5 million. Support to mass transit, more than $1.124.9 billion, which is almost $87.6 million, 8.4% better than planned. And if there's no questions on the basic financial stuff, let me just quickly walk you through this traffic slide. It begins on page 62. Sure.
How are we doing with unpaid Easy Pass violators?
It's about the same as it's been for quite some time. Well, for Easy Pass violators, I mean, we have very few easy. You're talking about AET violators at the Henry Hudson? Yeah, we have very little change since we last talked to you about it. But either it's about the same as it's been. But we will hope to start seeing some effects of the change in the DMV regulations later this year.
When do those go?
They're in effect now. But in terms of our billing, there's a 3-month lag basically before people are actually in violation. So we should start seeing some of those violations, go out in probably April or May. Okay, let me just walk you through this traffic slide. It's in the book, but I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to get it the right direction. So if you want a hard copy, I have that too. 62. So basically what this shows is that the early part of this 10-year, 11-year period, the 2004 to 7 period, those were the highest years we ever had in terms of traffic, over 300 million each year. In 2008, you can see the preliminary effects of the Great Recession hit, and we had a big drop in traffic, almost 3% that year, and it continued in 2009. There was also a toll increase both those years, so that contributed significantly to the drop in traffic. There was also a very bad winter in 2009. We started to flatten out in 2010, but then 2011, there was a huge spike in gas prices, hit $4 for just the second time, and gas prices stayed very high for some time, starting in 2011. We also, again, had another toll increase in 2011. 2012, we probably would have been up some, but the effects of Sandy hit in 2012, so that's the reason for the drop in that year. 2013, we went up slightly despite the toll increase, but that's really because the Sandy hit the previous year. Otherwise, we would have been down a little bit in 2013. But you can see the last 2 years, beginning in 2014 and then the big jump this year in 2015, we're getting closer to that high we had the early part of this decade. And again, we think gas prices is driving a lot of it, but we had a relatively small toll increase this past time. Also, the general economy improving, et cetera. So there's a lot of things that happen, but we think that the gas prices are probably the biggest driver based on what we've seen when gas prices spike and the big drop.
When was Easy Pass instituted?
The mid-90s, or 95, right. So, yeah, we never would be able to have this kind of traffic without Easy Pass. I mean, we had a big, if I went back and showed you 95, you'd see a big drop, in a big increase rather in the latter part of that decade in the 90s. It wouldn't have been possible without Easy Pass.
Where do we go, those overhead systems?
Right. Okay.
Well, it is, I mean, I appreciate
Appreciate you guys doing it. It's a very interesting chart.
It is.
It says a lot about the region,
Right.
the economy, gas prices, Easy Pass,
Yes.
the work TBTA has done with modernizing a lot of the facilities.
Right.
All of those things provide a reason for people to get in their car and go over a bridge or a tunnel, as the case may be. So while the numbers are the numbers, they say a lot about the region and the work that's been done in that regard, and that's been very helpful. Yeah.
Thanks, Mitch.
Thank you. I have no doubt, sooner or later, we're going to get to 2007. If not, if gas prices stay the same, maybe not in
okay.
16, but in 17,
Yeah, I
We'll
think
get
you
the
might,
2007
I think that's a big indicator of gas prices if that stays the
Yeah.
same.
yeah. I think the other thing that helped, and you just said the total increase, but the signs we put up showing the differential
I know.
between Easy Pass and non-Easy Pass, I think has done a lot to tell people,
Yeah.
the toll went up, but it didn't go up that much
You're right.
if you're on Easy Pass.
You're right, and what we've seen an increase in Easy Pass traffic. Cash traffic is still going down, actually.
Right.
Even despite these numbers, cash traffic is actually going down, but Easy Pass
Right, because
obviously
people are realizing
Right.
to get the number one, they may not want to be in the cash lane with
Mm-hmm.
the amount of time it takes, but number two, they also want the most discount they can get, and that is, you got to have an Easy Pass.
You're right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I have an action item for the operating surplus. So if you don't mind, I will read this into the record. The item begins on page 65. Included in the attachments to the staff summary are 8 resolutions associated with transferring the 2015 TBTA operating surplus. These actions can be summarized as follows. Resolutions to certify and transfer $750,716,715 in 2015 operating surplus to the MTA and New York City Transit pursuant to Section 1219A-2B of the Public Authorities Law of the State of New York. Resolutions to transfer the 2015 investment income of $182,604 to the MTA pursuant to the Section 569C of the Public Authorities Law of the State of New York. Resolutions to deduct from the fiscal 2016 operating surplus of TBTA the amount of $26,880,799 to be deposited into a necessary reconstruction reserve, which was adopted by board resolution on March 29, 1968. Money credited to the reserve will be applied to the payment of the cost and expense of current and anticipated necessary construction of TBTA facilities. And finally, resolutions pursuant to the Public Authorities Law to advance monthly the fiscal year 2016 TBTA surplus to the MTA and New York City Transit in an aggregate amount not to exceed 90% of the estimate of the sum of that month's operations, if available, with the first $1.8 million going to New York City Transit and the remaining sum split 50% to New York City Transit, less applicable bond service, and 50% to the MTA, less applicable bond service. Your approval is requested.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thanks.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. We also have the adopted budget and financial plan in the book as an information item. It's essentially the same as what was adopted by the board in December. Includes schedules detailing the monthly allocation for purposes of reporting. If there's no questions on that, we'll move on to the capital program status report. Joe Keane.
So, morning. The report on the capital program can be found on page 97 of the committee report. The report presents an overview of our planned 2016 commitments and completions, as well as progress achieved through the end of January. For 2016, we plan to commit $105.5 million in commitments through 76 separate tasks. In 2016, we plan to complete 10 projects with a cumulative value of $146.4 million. In January, there were 12 commitments made with a total value of $4.2 million. There were no planned or completed projects in January. 4 task-level closeouts with a total value of $33.4 million were made in January. Unless there are any questions, that completes my report.
Questions? No. Okay,
Move on to the procurement report.
Good morning. The procurement report starts on page 110. There are 4 procurements in all. There's 1 non-competitive procurement, which is an agreement between Bridges and Tunnels and New York City Department of Transportation to allow preliminary foundation and realignment work and associated services to be performed by DOT's in-place contractor for a future direct connector ramp between the RFK Bridge Manhattan ramp and the Harlem River Drive, at significant cost savings and reduced traffic and construction impact to the community. This agreement is in the amount of $22.9 million. There are 3 competitive procurements, 1 personal service contract for commercial driver's license training for both bridge and tunnel maintenance employees and certain New York City Transit employees in the negotiated amount of $1,338,025. 1 is a discretionary procurement for a miscellaneous service to provide expert assistance in preparing and developing civil service exams, which are administered by DCAST for various levels of bridge and tunnel maintainers, in the negotiated amount of $56,400. There's also a procurement modification in the negotiated amount of $3,332,876, which develops and implements an all-electronic tolling pilot program at the Cross Bay and the Marine Parkway bridges, and updates the software of the existing toll registry system at all facilities. The value of these procurements total $27,627,000. Unless there are any questions,
first bill.
So moved.
Second. Any questions, Andrew?
The connector from the RFK to the northbound Harlem River Drive makes perfect sense. Is a southbound connector from Harlem River Drive to the RFK Bridge envisioned at some point?
There's already there's an existing connector.
I looked at the diagram and it didn't appear. There is an existing?
Yes, yes, there is.
Yeah, but not on that part. Yeah. How long has that been?
Since the bridge is
It's been there, yeah, originally.
It's original.
Original.
Any other questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Procurements carried.
Okay, diversity report. Sean Moore.
The MTA Bridges and Tunnel Diversity Report is on pages 122 through 129. It represents the year-end report. MTA Bridges and Tunnel workforce composition included 51 new hires, 25% represented females, and 59% represented minorities. MTA Bridges and Tunnel continues to address underutilization for females in the officials and administrative category, as well as Hispanics in the administrative support and service maintenance. We did experience an increase in the hiring of females in the professional category, technicians, as well as protective services. The EEO and Title VI complaints is on 127 through 129. We had a caseload of 15 EEO complaints, 11 internal, 4 external, and we closed out 5 EEO complaints this year. We have no reported Title VI complaints. On the diversity outreach, we held a diversity outreach event January 28th for as-needed contracts, specifically to target MWBE design, engineer, inspection, and engineer support services. It was a smaller outreach event. We were trying to target a specific group. We had 80 participants, 11 primes, and 34 firms were represented. We also had the wonderful opportunity to start up our Diversity Council this year. We held a diversity event for African American History Month on February 9th, where we honored the rich diversity of TBTA. Through our history and our research, we discovered we had a design engineer, Joseph Lincoln Parker, who was on board starting with New York City Tunnel Authority back in the 1920s and the 1930s, and then thereafter at TBTA. He was a graduate from MIT. He also was a World War I veteran. He was from Omega Sci-Fi. We had the wonderful opportunity also to hear from the New York Council member, Robert Cornicky Jr., who provided a proclamation for the family. His grandson actually came all the way from West Virginia to participate in our event, and it was absolutely fabulous. He actually had to return to work that evening at 9:30, but he actually made it. We also had his family from Delaware on Skype, and thank you to the technology here at HQ. They sent their thanks. They had their 92-year-old mother, his daughter-in-law was online, was able to watch from Skype as well. So they just sent their thank yous, and they so much appreciate it. I also want to take the opportunity to thank all the senior staff here, our acting president for speaking on our behalf. Without your support, it would not have been a success. We filled up the room, and we had a great time. Thank you.
Thanks. Sean gets the thanks. She pulled it all together. But I think that concludes our agenda if there's no further questions.
Okay, any other questions? Can I have a motion?
Move.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.